let her know, I gotta let her know that she my white horse, she my medical. She like my baby mama, know how to take care. I'll be ready for her, and if it's what you want, I'ma give it to you.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel, Always Watching. So I just finished watching the new season of Narcos, and wow, everyone's a professor, I think. So for those of you watching it sternly and super serious with their arms crossed like this, and you know, it's funny because these shows, I'm not gonna say they simplify, you know, really complicated issues, but they make them look complicated enough that everyone just becomes like an expert. So I know for me, I was sitting there with my arms crossed like,
he shouldn't have done this, he shouldn't have done that, like what an idiot, like nah. Anyway.
So the difference between this season and all the other seasons is basically nothing. So you have a narco who basically it's his rise and fall. So the only difference between this and the other seasons is that instead of Colombia, it's in Mexico. And it's essentially like the origin stories of the drug trade in Mexico. So how did they begin? What happened? Who, what? Like, how did we get to where we are today where, you know, journalists being shot every day? Like, how do we get to this point where it's such a norm? And that's where the series attempts to sort of dissect what had happened. So in this case, we're following Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo, who he's sort of the subject of the story. And for me, I don't know, I was rooting for him. I really liked him. And that's the thing about these shows, they get you rooting for the bad guy. And a lot of the times it's because it's impossible to tell who the good guy was. So for those of you unfamiliar, basically during this time, America was fighting a war on communism. So they used a lot of the cartel and they used a lot of traffickers to basically smuggle guns and weapons to, I guess, the heads of states that they wanted to win and overthrow, I guess, the governments that were not following their agenda. And as a result of that, like, it was a free-for-all. So essentially, like, the cartels were a means to an end that were eventually supposed to be, I guess, you know, stopped. But the problem is things got so out of hand and their oversight was so minimal, and their role in this war on, you know, in this war on communism was just so important that it got to a point where the cartel had, I guess, leverage to, you know, sneak it, basically just evade the law. And they focus on individuals, but you see, like, as the story progresses and as the seasons go on, that like people are gonna get their cocaine regardless. Like, the individual is basically is useless. Like, whether or not you arrest the guy, whether or not you don't arrest him, like, somebody else will come along and somebody else will, you know, get those tons through. So, and essentially this is what this is. It's like a Marvel story, you know. You're trying to wonder, like, before the joke, or, you know, who are these people before they became who they are. And you see, like, the elitism, and, you know, just because something is illegal doesn't make it wrong. And sometimes we're quick to say that this is wrong because it's illegal, but if something is legal but it's wrong, we're quick to look the other way. So it's really interesting because in the beginning, I guess before it was what it was now, there was like an attempt to kind of consolidate all of these areas and kind of monopolize the drug trade. But, you know, due to the nature of the trade, like, you have a lot of naturally violent and, you know, abusive people and power-hungry people that, you know, can't really compromise, and diplomacy isn't really the name of the game here. And for that, you know, things crumble and things fall. But it's just, it's funny looking at the contrast, because on the media, we're so used to seeing these drug cartels as barbarians. Like, you see El Chapo running around in a hole, like, you're like, who the fuck are these guys? And then on the flip side, like, law enforcement is equally trashy. You know, they're quick to shoot, they're quick, you know, and watching the show, like, you already have a bad taste in your mouth in terms of how we think drug traffickers are and how we think people who kind of engage in these illegal activities are. And then on the flip side, you think about the police and the people, like, catching them and sacrificing themselves, you know, for allegedly our better good. And, you know, you kind of wonder, like, did they have it coming? Like, is this I don't know about you, but I had no sympathy for the police here. Like, I really just didn't care. And you see him at the end, because essentially it's, because all these shows, all these kind of narco shows have a narco and a cop. And it's kind of like, you know, one person is trying to catch the other. And in the end, the cop ends up catching the narco, but at what cost? And it's like they search for these, especially for the police, you know, they want like the simplified answer, like, now we caught you and now it's all over. But it's like,
Is it?
you know, and also like, you're not a saint. And maybe a lot of it is elitism, and maybe a lot of it is just maybe a lack of respect or understanding. I think there's one particular scene where he really, the DEA agent especially, like he had it in his, he's really fixated on getting this guy, and one thing leads to another, and of course he underestimated them, and it ends up being an ambush. And I think this says a lot about how they see them. Maybe they don't take them seriously, maybe they don't think they're as sophisticated or as intelligent as, God forbid, the DEA, but you get a sense that a lot of their undoing and a lot of their problems are self-inflicted and self-caused. And maybe it's just, you know, inherent racism. I don't know what it is, but like watching this kind of cat and mouse game, you kind of wonder, like you see that these guys are vicious. You see that this guy is like, you know, doing anything and everything to keep his power, and yet you think your team of 5 guys is gonna catch him.
Like, is that?
And I like how the show is realistic. I like how it doesn't kind of glamorize, or it just kind of shows you, like, actually, no, your team of 5 guys isn't getting shit. Basically, nobody cares about the drug trade. And basically, like, I guess the futility of it all, you know. And now I think, I don't know about you, but I think drug use is so common and people don't look down on it anymore. So in a way, it's even worse. The types of drugs we use, that's, you know, greatly, and there's, like, the stigma against drug use is just so, is not really that high, I feel like. Let me know, I don't think it's that high. And I think even just looking at the countries, I think Canada has one of the highest rates of recreational cocaine use. Like, this is just, high functioning drug addicts are the new norm. And you can blame the drug traffickers, but at the same time, you look at the backstory and you look at how, because you have to ask yourself, like, how did these guys get to a position where they're even able, like this is the new norm. And so, you know, teamwork makes the dream work here, and you really have to think about who enables who, and it takes 2 to tango, I think. And the whole war on communism and the whole, you know, this elitist attitude that America is the best and just capitalism is the best, and, you know, and you turn a blind eye to all these sort of wrongdoings in hopes of meeting or getting to some greater good. But in the end, you know, ideas are one thing, but actions are another. And you see that in defending this idea, the actual result of it is just bloodshed. And then you're kind of left asking yourself, like, who's actually responsible for this? Was it weird that I was rooting for the drug cartel? Like, even in the other Narcos series, I was like, I know he's gonna die and I know he's gonna go to jail, but still, like, you're like, come on, just evade the American prison system, please. It's horrible. Anyways, I really enjoyed it. It had me thinking, it had me pondering about life, and, you know, remembering my political science days. And let me know what you think. There's a lot you could say about it, even now. And you think about, like, all this controversy with, you know, Mexico and illegal immigration. And, you know, recently I think a book came out with this author, and she's talking about a mother and son running across the border, fleeing from this cartel. And I think the cartel have become so a caricature, you know, like we see them as all the same. Like, they're just these guys who machete people and basically escape through holes. And what I like about the show is it takes away the caricature, and then you see that they're all like individuals and they all have different motivations and they all have different things. And I think the simplification of the drug trade and the people involved is also a result of maybe just a lack of understanding, or just a lack of carelessness on law enforcement's part to really, you know, humble themselves and realize that a lot of this was self-inflicted, and maybe you underestimated them, and maybe, maybe they didn't go to Harvard, or maybe they're not like, they failed out of, elementary school, but that doesn't make them any less of a threat. And there's always this kind of assumption, I think, throughout the show, especially with the police, like when it goes back and forth, that eventually they'll win, and eventually like good will prevail, and it's just not the world we live in. And in the ending, you saw that, like, you're not, like, yeah, maybe you got the guy, but you got a long road ahead, as evidenced by, our modern day times. So thanks for stopping by. Let me know what you think. Always a pleasure. Take care, and until next time.